Welcome back, everyone, to today's Explainer. Now listen, we are about to unpack a story that is absolutely guaranteed to make you double-check your locks before you go to sleep tonight. We're diving deep into a truly terrifying source account known as Anjani Bhool, which roughly translates to the unknown mistake. Today, we are going to dissect the anatomy of a genuine nightmare, piece by piece. So dim the lights, settle in, and prepare yourself for a really chilling analysis. Okay, so let's kick things off with a rather terrifying question. Can the punishment for an unknown mistake actually be death? Well, to understand this, we really need to look at the subject of our analysis. Her name is Ivana. She's a 27-year-old housewife living a very simple, quiet life up in a pretty isolated hilly area. Now, because her husband travels a lot for work and her kids are away studying, Ivana has grown totally accustomed to being completely alone in this remote house at night. She feels safe. But as you'll see, isolation can turn from a comfort into a deadly trap in an absolute instant.
Part 1. The Midnight Knock.
I want you to picture the profound vulnerability here. She is all alone, the house is completely silent. It's just another ordinary, peaceful night where she expects absolutely nothing to happen. When suddenly, the heavy silence is pierced by a sound that simply does not belong. The doorbell rings, and it rings at exactly 12:30 a.m. Now, if you're in a bustling city, right, maybe you'd think it's just a mistaken food delivery. But in a remote, hilly neighborhood where houses are miles apart, absolutely no one is visiting at this hour. The source material emphasizes this immediate, sinking dread that washes over her. That time alone is a massive red flag. Part 2. The Thirsty Girl. So, overcoming her initial shock, Ivana cautiously creeps to the door, and what she sees creates this incredibly jarring psychological conflict. You've got this deeply eerie timing, past midnight, middle of nowhere, clashing violently with a genuinely pitiful sight. Standing right there on the porch is a young girl. Her clothes are completely torn and old, her hair is wild and unkempt, and she's holding up this empty plastic bottle, just sobbing hysterically that she hasn't had a single drop to drink since morning. In a split second, the terror of that midnight knock is replaced by deep human pity. In this lonely house, empathy wins out. Ivana cracks the door just enough to take the empty bottle from the crying kid, telling her, "Hey, wait right there." But this is where the vibe shifts right back to deeply unsettling. Ivana fills the bottle, heads back to the front door, and the porch is completely empty. The girl has literally vanished into the silent, dark night. No footsteps, no shadows. Despite her total confusion, the sheer, heavy exhaustion of the hour just takes over. Ivana leaves the water bottle out on the porch, locks up tight, and goes right back to her bedroom to sleep. So the house is quiet again. The hills are dead silent. Ivana falls into a deep, deep sleep. But then, she shifts in her bed. Her foot brushes against something solid. She slowly opens her eyes in the pitch black, and her blood runs entirely cold. Lying right there, literally right next to her in her own bed, is that exact same disheveled girl from the porch. And she is just staring at Ivana, laughing this slow, totally chilling laugh. Part 3. The Terrifying Kitchen. Now, here's where fight or flight kicks in, and Ivana's sheer panic actually transforms into a fierce, protective anger. She screams at the top of her lungs and leaps out of bed. Startled, the girl scrambles up, sprints out of the bedroom, and bolts straight down the hall into the kitchen. Furious that someone is in her home, Ivana chases right after her. She charges into the kitchen, ready for a confrontation, but finds it totally empty. And then, absolute chaos erupts. The kitchen lights start violently flickering. Every single cabinet door starts violently slamming open and shut on its own over and over again. Heavy knives come crashing down onto the floor, barely missing her feet. And finally, the most horrifying sight of all, thick, foul, pitch black water begins rapidly bubbling and rising straight up out of the kitchen sink drain. Ivana is just frozen in pure shock. Part 4. The Game of Death. As the chaotic banging finally stops, the lights are still strobing. Ivana is standing completely paralyzed in the center of the kitchen. And then, right from behind her, she hears it again. It's the little girl. She's clapping her hands together, laughing hysterically at the pure terror written all over Ivana's face. Ivana takes one desperate step toward her, but suddenly, bam! An invisible force grabs a brutal hold of her hair from behind. She's violently yanked backward, her head slammed down toward that sink full of bubbling black water. Her hair is literally sucked deep down into the drain, anchoring her in place, while her face is shoved into the filthy sludge. She's choking. She's completely unable to breathe, and it takes every single ounce of her adrenaline to violently push herself back, ripping her own hair out of her scalp just to break free from the sink's deadly grip.
I mean, just look at how rapidly this situation escalated. At 12:30 a.m., she's just a sympathetic woman answering a doorbell. By 12:45, she's back in bed, dismissing a weird encounter. And by 2 a.m., she is literally fighting for her life against a demonic entity in her own kitchen. Realizing she's dealing with something incredibly dark, a battered and bruised Ivana desperately calls her husband. He promises to send the neighbors to help immediately, and he tells her to flee the house the exact second she hangs up the phone. But the very second she drops the phone, a chilling voice echoes from the dark shadows of the hallway. It's singing a really common, innocent children's nursery rhyme, but twisting it into this sinister death threat. In a slow, haunting sing-song rhythm, the entity chants, "Fish, fish is the queen of the water. Her life is the water. If you touch her, she will get scared. If you take her out, she will die." Before Ivana can even process that threat, the little girl materializes right in front of her. Only she's not laughing anymore. She lunges. She wraps her freezing cold hands around Ivana's throat, literally choking the life out of her. Ivana's vision is going entirely dark, but at that exact second, violent banging echoes from the front door. The neighbors are here. Hearing her muffled screams, a neighbor violently kicks the door completely off its hinges and rushes inside. And the absolute second those neighbors cross the threshold, the little girl just completely vanishes into thin air. Ivana collapses onto the floor, gasping for air, with deep red handprints bruised right into her neck. Okay, so we have to pause here, take a breath, and ask the most terrifying question of all. Why? Why on earth did all of this happen? Why would a seemingly random, deeply malicious entity launch such an unprovoked, brutal attack on an innocent woman who was just trying to give a thirsty kid some water? Because in these source accounts, spirits rarely attack with zero cause. There's almost always a trigger.
Part 5. The Cursed Ring.
Once the dust settled, Ivana finally connected the dots to a seemingly insignificant event that happened exactly 1 week prior. And this right here brilliantly illustrates the horrific danger of the unknown mistake. So a week before this nightmare, Ivana was on a perfectly normal, happy family vacation. But while out walking, she accidentally stepped on a strange, discarded ring lying right there in the dirt. Instead of just leaving it, she picked it up and she brought it home with her. The very next morning, the ring had mysteriously vanished from her house. She hadn't thought twice about it, but the source material makes it crystal clear. By bringing that lost object across her threshold, she had unknowingly invited the dark entity attached to it straight into her life. Once they realized the true origin of the entity, Ivana's family didn't mess around. They didn't waste a single second. They immediately arranged for a Shuddhikaran, which is this intense spiritual purification and cleansing ritual specifically designed to sever demonic attachments and purge a physical space of evil energy. The ritual was performed that exact same day. It successfully broke the invisible tether between the lost ring and Ivana's home, and that little girl with the messy hair was never, ever seen again. But of course, the psychological scars absolutely remain. To this day, the source notes that Ivana actually mutters an apology out loud for any unknown mistakes every single night before she closes her eyes. Which brings us to a final, pretty unsettling question for you all. Have you ever, while out on a walk, picked up a shiny coin, maybe a discarded trinket, or an abandoned piece of jewelry that didn't belong to you, and brought it into your home? Think very carefully about what unseen things you might have carried through your front door. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Stay safe out there, and remember, some mistakes are deadly, even if you have no idea you're making them.